This is Jonathan Gilliam back on the Experts Podcast. The truth has arrived. And I hope you got to watch the first evening or day one of the Republican convention, because it is exactly what needs to be said. I just tweeted out a little bit ago that I think, maybe the president should just go ahead and just forget about the rest of the week's convention, just replay the first night over and over and over again, because I don't know if you can get much better than what they did. Now, I'm sure that they can, and I was being facetious, but I didn't think I'd ever use the word facetious in this podcast, but I guess I have. But I think what they did last night was remarkable. And what's even more remarkable, you know how I like to look at the stories and get not what the headline says, but get the real story behind the headlines. And today, what the story is what they didn't report. When I go on, Drudge, which I go on there a lot, it's the great, it's the compilation. Now, Drudge wasn't always like this. It's an aggregate, and it was just the great aggregate. Like, you would go there and it would have all these different stories from all over the place. Now, everything is left. Everything on there is left. And then I go to foxnews.com and I look at their headlines, and it still doesn't reflect the reality of what I saw last night. I mean, the top headline on foxnews.com after yesterday's convention, and I'm going to play, I think, what were the highlights. I mean, there were so many highlights, but there was a couple things that were said that just stand out above and beyond all things. Now, they talked about communism and all these different things, and I'll get to that. But there's a couple of things that are just highlights. But as you're going to see by the end of this podcast, a lot of it is stuff that I say on a daily basis, and a lot of the people that are awake feel on a daily basis. But when you look at what's the headlines, it's just not reflected. Like I was going to say, the first headline, the top headline on Fox News, this is what it says: fast-paced, upbeat. That is all that they could come up with. Fast-paced, upbeat. Michael Goodwin, whoever that is, says the Dems may be concerned after RNC showcases its diversity. Earthquake possible. Okay, that's great. But you see, I don't know if they're purposely missing it or if this is just a part of not making a big deal out of the truth, which is we are facing a potential communist takeover in this country. It doesn't even matter if the president wins or not. If he doesn't win, I mean, we're done. We're done. And the rest of the world's done. If the president wins, potentially we have at least 4 more years of figuring out what we're going to do for 2024, because they're taking over at the local level, and the left is taking over at the local level. They're taking over in Congress. Who knows what's going to happen in the Senate? And the people on the Republican establishment, remember, Donald Trump is not Republican establishment, but the people that are Republican establishment, they are lockstep with the left, not necessarily in ideological terms, but they do not make it difficult for the left to do what they want to do and what they're pushing towards. So Drudge, as I was going to say, when I look at Drudge, the great aggregate, which means they just take headlines from all over and put them on here, and then you click on it, it goes to those stories. So Drudge is nothing more than just a landing page for all these different news agencies and their stories. And it clearly does not reflect what I saw last night. The headline, the main headline, because Drudge has a main headline right there. It's a picture of the president, and it says, Trump or doom. And I just cannot tell you what I saw, and this is off of the AP, the Associated Press, supposedly real media. Well, it's not real media. It's leftist as far as you can go, and it used to be subtle. Now it's not subtle at all. It's as subtle as a volcano or a double hurricane like they're having down in the Gulf of Mexico. The headline there reads, Republicans paint dark picture of future if Trump loses. Well, yeah. It is clear if you look around the United States and around the world, wherever the leftists get into power, it is not a good day. Talk to the people that live in South Africa. Talk to the people that live in Australia. Talk to the people in London. Talk to the people in Spain. Talk to the people in Venezuela. Talk to the people in Cuba. Talk to the people in Hong Kong. Weapons taken away. Freedoms taken away. Totally submissive to their governments. Nothing good is going to come out of it. And again, that's, if you listen to this podcast, you probably understand that already. But the headlines do not reflect what I saw last night and what so many people saw. There is one headline on Fox where it says that somebody called in on C-SPAN and said that they're a lifelong Democrat and they're changing their vote. That's how impressive a lot of this stuff was. In fact, I'll just play that soundbite right now. If they have it up here, let's see if they have it up here. Yeah, here it is. This is from C-SPAN. This is a caller calling in on C-SPAN.
Rick in Lorain, Ohio, Democrat. Hi, Rick.
How you doing tonight? I'm a lifelong Democrat. I'm from Lorain, Ohio, which is a Democrat city in Ohio. And I just want to say, after watching the convention tonight on TV, on C-SPAN here, I am definitely changing my vote to Republican. And I'll tell you what, they just put the Democratic Party or the Republican Party to shame. I'm going to follow the Republican Party now.
But why? What was it that convinced you about tonight?
It was the heartfelt way they came across to the American people, and I was really touched by the number of times they used the word God. They put God into everything, and the people on the Democratic side on their convention act like they were pushing God right out of it, and that had a lot to do with changing my mind.
Now, Rick, did you say you were a union member?
No, sir, I'm from...
That's the only question he has for him. Did you say you're a union member? Instead of like going on and asking, of course, this is C-SPAN. It's not like any real hard-hitting news, but that's it. And he says he's not a union member.
Lorain, Ohio, and we are a Democrat town here and have been for 50 years.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. So there you go. And that's a very important thing, and that's a very important statement because it shows you exactly what I'm talking about. This is what I saw in this convention, and there's so many different things about it that were impressive. I'm going to save the best, I think, for last, but there's a couple, usually I like to play these, a little bit of a soundbite here and a little bit of a soundbite there, but I really want to start out with you hearing from the couple that was from St. Louis, where they had the Black Lives Matter protesters and rioters. Sorry if I'm stuttering because I'm trying to pull this up at the same time when I'm talking. But it's the couple that pulled out their guns, terrible gun handling skills, just horrendous gun handling skills. However, and they were liberals. I think the husband's an attorney. I don't know about the wife, but I think they're both attorneys. But I know the husband's an attorney. And they got brought up on charges for bringing their guns out, even though the Black Lives Matter rioters, they call them protesters, they were rioters, came into their neighborhood, tore down a fence, and then were threatening people. And they pulled out their guns and defended their property, which is a historical house. And nothing happened to them until the leftist prosecutor got a hold of him and charged him with or brought him up on charges of a felony. So I want you to hear their words. It's not a long, these, thank goodness these sound bites are not, these speeches that they gave are not long. That's one of the reasons why it was so good, because the speeches were short, except for Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley, I'm not going to play a soundbite from her. The entire speech was about her. It was like listening to one of these social media influencers that I was talking about in yesterday's show. And Nikki Haley, 1 year she hates the president, the next year she loves him. Whatever the president does for Nikki Haley is going to determine what Nikki Haley feels about the president. And I don't like it. I love the fact that Sebastian Gorka, when I tweeted that out, good old Gorka, because I tweeted out that she annoys me, and the whole thing was great except for her, and it bothered me because she's all about herself and was a never Trumper and now's a Trumper, and he posted a picture of her with Brennan, who was head of the CIA, and is one of the oddest and I think most criminal, underhanded heads of an agency that we've ever had. Durham, I don't know if you know about this, but Durham is apparently not going to go after him. That's a whole nother show. But Nikki Haley, you guys need it down there. Is it North Carolina or South Carolina? You need to get away from her. She's bad news. I'm telling you right now. I usually call it pretty correctly. Now, let me play this couple, the McCluskeys from St. Louis. Let me go ahead and play this because I want you to hear in their words. Remember, these are people that used to be Democrats, or I don't know if they're still Democrats, but I'm sure they're giving that a second thought now. But just listen to their words and what has actually occurred, what has happened to them since that day when they defended their home with guns and the constitutional rights that they have to do that. Listen what's happened to them.
Good evening, America. We are Mark and Patty McCloskey. We're speaking to you tonight from St. Louis, Missouri, where just weeks ago you may have seen us defending our home as a mob of protesters descended on our neighborhood.
America is such a great country that not only do you have the right to own a gun and use it to defend yourself, but thousands of Americans will offer you free advice on how to use it. At least that's what we experienced.
I actually tweeted out that I would give them free weapons handling courses if they answered my tweet. Never heard from them, but I'd give them free weapons handling courses and gun safety, and I'd even bring some other SEALs with me to do it. They would have a great time, trust me, but they definitely need it. But regardless, I liked her sense of humor there.
What you saw happen to us could just as easily happen to any of you who are watching from quiet neighborhoods around our country. And that's what we want to speak to you about tonight.
That's exactly right. Whether it's the defunding of police, ending cash bail so criminals can be released back out on the streets the same day to riot again, or encouraging anarchy and chaos on our streets, it seems as if the Democrats no longer view the government's job as protecting honest citizens from criminals, but rather protecting criminals from honest citizens. Not a single person in the out-of-control mob you saw at our house was charged with a crime. But you know who was? We were. They've actually charged us with felonies for daring to defend our home. On top of that, consider this. The Marxist liberal activist leading the mob to our neighborhood stood outside our home with a bullhorn screaming, "You can't stop the revolution." Just weeks later, that same Marxist activist won the Democrat nomination to hold a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. In the city of St. Louis, that's the same as winning the general election. That Marxist revolutionary is now going to be the Congresswoman from the 1st District of Missouri.
That should scare you to death. That should really, see, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Even if the president wins this election, we are still facing an increasingly volatile Congress because it is more and more populated, or it's populated more and more by not just somebody who's liberal. We're talking about communists, which I'll tell you, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi and all of them, as I've said before, they are all in the same mindset. They just move at a different speed. That's why it looks like they're not as far left. All right, let's keep going on this.
These radicals are not content with marching in the streets. They want to walk the halls of Congress. They want to take over. They want power. This is Joe Biden's party. These are the people who will be in charge of your future and the future of your children.
They're not satisfied with spreading the chaos and violence into our communities. They want to abolish the suburbs altogether by ending single-family home zoning.
Now, I want you to realize what they're talking about. Single-family home zoning. That's where an area is zoned so that you can have a home that is yours, that you can own it, and that you can have your family there and not have to worry about, somebody living down the hallway from you and you living in a government-controlled home that is no different than what we were talking about yesterday when I'm watching this show Turn, which I advise everybody watch that on Netflix. And if you don't have Netflix, just find it. It's about the Culper Ring, which is a group of spies for George Washington on Long Island. And the story about the how they were oppressed by the King of England is amazing. And having these British soldiers occupying their homes and living there, and the people becoming submissive and subservient under them, it's just unbelievable. And people who wonder what the Third Amendment's all about, when you see that, you will see exactly what it's about. And what she's talking about is not that they would come and quarter in your home, but they own your home.
This forced rezoning would bring crime, lawlessness, and low-quality apartments into now thriving suburban neighborhoods. President Trump smartly ended this government overreach, but Joe Biden wants to bring it back. These are the policies that are coming to a neighborhood near you. So make no mistake, no matter where you live, your family will not be safe in the radical Democrats' America.
At this moment in history, if you stand up for yourself and for the values our country was founded on, the mob, spurred on by their allies in the media, will try to destroy you. You've seen us on your TV screens and Twitter feeds. You know that we're not the kind of people who back down. Thankfully, neither is Donald Trump. President Trump will defend the God-given right of every American to protect their homes and their families. But more than that, Trump's vision for America is a country where you have an opportunity to work hard and build the life you dream of, with a job you love, with your children being educated in great schools, in a community where your family can play in the backyard without fear, worship in a church without shame, and express your beliefs without retribution. Trump brought us the greatest economy our country had ever seen. The Democrats have brought us nothing but destruction.
When we don't have basic safety and security in our communities, we'll never be free to build a brighter future for ourselves, for our children, or for our country. That's what's at stake in this election, and that's why we must re-elect Donald Trump. God bless you. God bless the president.
And God bless these United States.
So there we go. The McCluskeys, that was an incredible statement on what they went through, who got elected as a result of that, basically. That's the craziest thing ever. And what is actually going on behind the scenes? I don't know if they were awoken to this because of what happened. I hope that that this is what's occurred, that they have woken up to the reality of the Democrat Party. But one of the things that they are talking about there at the end reminded me of another thing I saw. I've been binge watching. I got one more episode of this show Turn. And as I watch the show, I actually go and research the real character, because there are some freedoms that they take with the storyline. But overall, what they show about how life was and what was going on, that's real. And the characters, by and large, are real. They may just play with their stories a little bit. But one of the things that happened is that the British bankrupted our Congress by printing money and then getting it into the market. And so it basically bankrupted our government and the ability of our government to finance the military. And that's why, for not months, not days, we're talking not like a government shutdown where they're shut down for 2 weeks. For years, people didn't get paid. They had rations. A lot of the times it was supplied by the farmers and people, or they would hunt on their own. But we're talking, these were big military armies that General Washington was over. And these people didn't get paid a lot of the times. The generals didn't get paid. In fact, that's why Benedict Arnold did what he did, was because of financial reasons. I mean, that plus he sounds like he was the ultimate narcissist, but he hadn't been paid, and he was owed basically $10,000 for all his pay, and he had been wounded in battle twice. And the reason I bring that up is because when they're talking about the cities and what the Democrats do to the cities, it appears to me, especially when I listen to what Cuomo has done to New York and what de Blasio is doing to New York City, now they're saying that they may not even allow outdoor seating at restaurants, and indoor seating may not be, they don't even know if they're going to allow it to come back. And I started thinking about this, okay? A lot of this stuff is run through my head while I'm listening to this speech by the McCluskeys there. Is it a potential thing that they're doing this to chase business? Because you look at Portland, you look at New York, you look at St. Louis or Kansas City, or now it's happening in Wisconsin. Wherever these riots happen and they're sustained, businesses leave. I mean, they're already leaving as it is because of the fake COVID crisis. Remember, I had COVID. I know it's a real virus, but when I say fake, it's because of the way it's being handled. It's being prolonged. The reality of not how bad it is, but how we deal with it is being set. The best way to deal with it's not even being discussed. They're doing it. What they're doing now is a way to bankrupt or get rid of businesses, and the businesses are leaving these cities. And here's what I'm wondering. Are they doing this to make the businesses leave so that they can then turn around and control those businesses? There's going to have to be grocery stores. There'll have to be restaurants, deliveries. Does that mean that friends, may not be government controlled right now, but friends of the left will come in and run all of that stuff and then eventually give it over to the government? That could be the case. There's definitely something up there. And when you hear this and they're talking about, getting rid of single family homes, and this communist from St. Louis now going to be in the House of Representatives, and the way that de Blasio and Cuomo and all these other governors and mayors around the country, how they are, these leftist governors and mayors and prosecutors, nothing's off the table. Nothing. Now, one of the other sound bites that I wanted to play you is from Jim Jordan. And of course, Jim Jordan goes through all the stuff that Trump has done, and a lot of people have. And look, it's the Republican convention, so they're going to pump Trump up. I mean, because he's the candidate. He's also the president, but he's also the candidate. But Jim Jordan tells a story, and I'm going to let him tell it. And this says a tremendous amount about who the president is. And I've talked to people that work for him, and they say the same thing. Now, I've also talked to people who did work for him. They didn't work for him. They did work for him, contractors and such, and they hate him because he is a very crude business person at times, and he is, kind of done some people wrong in business. I'll admit what I'm told. I'm not going to try to paint a picture of the president as somebody that he's not, but listen, I mean, that's how you become a billionaire. Talk to anybody. I'm sure that Bill Gates has tons of enemies. I know he did. Bill Gates screwed over the guy who invented DOS, which is what Microsoft Office runs on. And I don't know if you know this story, but he basically told the guy that IBM was not going to, or that IBM was either not going to or was going to purchase Windows for all the computing systems, but they were only going to pay him this much, and so that's what he paid. $50,000 is what he paid the guy for, full well knowing that he'd already sold it to IBM, and IBM he told them that he had already bought it. So he's a liar and a cheat and a weirdo, but you know that's the way people are. That to become a billionaire, you're gonna do some things that will push the ethical boundaries. There's very few people that are that rich that have not made people angry somewhere along the way. It is what it is. Don't get in business if you're not ready for that. But there's another side to the president, not just a harsh business person, but there's also a man that is compassionate and caring, and all the people that I've talked to that actually work for him love the guy. And I'm talking about people that, that did menial jobs for him, and then people that worked in the executive areas around him. All of them said the same thing. And I think the story by Jim Jordan actually points that out. So here it is.
But what I also appreciate about the president is something most Americans never get to see: how much he truly cares about people. Our family has seen it. 2 years ago, our nephew Eli was killed in a car accident. He lived a mile up the road from us, grew up wrestling and training with our boys, was a high school state champion, varsity athlete for the University of Wisconsin. It was a Saturday morning, 3 days after the accident. I walked to the car to head up to Eli's parents' home when the president called. We talked about a few issues, and then he asked how the family was doing. I said, "They're doing okay, Mr. President, but it's tough." The president said, "Yeah, losing a loved one is always difficult, and it's really tough when they're so young." I then said, "Mr. President, I'm actually walking into their house right now. Obviously, they don't know that I'm talking to you, but if you'd be willing to say hello to Eli's dad, you'd make a terrible day a little less terrible." "What's his name?" the president asked. I walked through the door and said, "Todd, the president wants to talk to you." For the next 5 minutes, family and friends sat in complete silence as the President of the United States took time to talk to a dad who was hurting. That's the president I've gotten to know the last 4 years. The president who shared private moments like this with soldiers, victims of violent crime, and people who've had businesses destroyed by the mob. That's the individual who's made America great again, and who knows America's best days are still in front of us.
Now, that is an incredible, incredible story. And Jim Jordan, you can tell that he's visibly shaken telling that story, and it's a legitimate story. And that tells you a lot when, a congressman who's a politician tells you a story. And I hold Jim Jordan in high regard, even though I think he should get away from Google, who's one of his largest donors. But I think he's a real honest warrior for freedom and has done incredible work in Congress. And for him to be moved like that, I take it at face value for what it is. It wasn't an act. Now, one of the other incredible sound bites that we get out of yesterday's day one of the RNC comes from Herschel Walker. And he's just I love listening to this guy when he talks, and he's a quintessential gentleman. And the stories that he tells about the president, well, listen, Herschel Walker is a black man. We're not going to hide that. And you're going to see that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what color he is. In the relationship with the president, and in reality, our reality, it doesn't matter if he's black. His life matters no matter what. I love the fact that the RNC said this multiple times. All lives matter. They said it. You see, when we do that, when we say that, when we all say it, or when somebody as big as the president says it, or the RNC, and they put it out there, it makes waves, and it really belittles the bullying tactics of the left. And it was a great thing to hear them say that, because it's true. All lives matter. And that includes black people, Chinese people, Korean people, Mexican people. The fact is, if you're American, you're an American, and you're free. That's the greatest thing. Listen, even lazy people, fat people, skinny people, their lives matter. The fact is you breathe the breath of life that was given to you by God. Your life matters. And even if what you're breathing is amniotic fluid, your life matters, which is another thing that they talked about. And it was mentioned several times. But let's listen to Herschel Walker.
I'm not an actor, a singer, or a politician. I'm Herschel Walker. Most of you know me as a football player, but I'm also a father, a man of faith, and a very good judge of character. I've known Donald Trump for 37 years, and I don't mean just casual ranting to him from time to time. I'm talking about a deep personal friendship. I watched him as an owner of a professional football team. Right after he bought the team, he set out to learn. He learned about the history of the team, the players, the coaches, every detail. Then he used what he learned to make the team better.
That right there, in essence, is why I was pushing this president so hard as a candidate, or actually before he even became a candidate. I'd mentioned him on the radio. Then when he declared, I jumped on board with it and was mentioning it on the radio and on TV and anywhere I could mention that people should vote for him because he has operational experience. And he's somebody who succeeded and failed and then succeeded again. And you can tell he's somebody that studies whatever he's doing. And listen, like him or not, these people that are writing all these books and saying all this stuff, he continues to succeed. And it's not because of damn luck. Luck always plays a part in everything that you do. But the reality is hard work pays off. And the way he just described him, he got this football team. He went and learned everything that he could about it and made it better.
I watched him in the boardroom. He can be in the middle of a big meeting, but if one of the kids was on the phone, he dropped everything to take the call. He taught me that the family should be your top priority. I watched him treat janitors.
Now, listen, people have a lot of criticism about the Trump kids, basically because they don't like their politics. But the reality is they're good people. They're good people. And I know on Twitter, trending tonight was cocaine because because Donald Trump Jr.'s eyes look bloodshot. Well, so did all the people on CNN. Jake Tapper had bloodshot eyes tonight. I don't know why, but the lighting looked like it was bad for Donald Trump Jr. and his eyes were red. And so they just assumed, because they're all trolls on Twitter and on social media, that he was doing cocaine. And then they put that out there all over the place. His kids have never been in trouble. His kids they're respectable in their manners. They have manners. And I've met Donald Trump Jr. a couple times, and he's a gentleman. I mean, he's a normal guy, besides being mega rich, but he's a great guy. That is a testament to a parent of who they are. You can be the aggressive person, in business, you can do these things, but you can measure a person off their kids. Another example of this, Kellyanne Conway and her weirdo, narcissistic 15-year-old daughter that wants to be emancipated from Kellyanne and her husband. And her husband is the biggest fruitcake I've ever seen in my life. The whole family's dysfunctional. I couldn't be more happy that she's out of the White House. It makes me ecstatic. I don't know Kellyanne Conway. I don't know her. I never met her. And she may be as legitimate as the day is bright. But when I look at that family, if I was the president, it would give me great pause. She's never spoke out of character. She's always been incredibly stoic when she was giving an interview, and her presence herself, minus her family, was pretty incredible. But I have to ask, what's going on behind the scenes when I see the holy terror that her daughter is and her husband? How could you live in that environment and not be like that? So I love the fact that Herschel Walker told this story about the president. Let's listen to this.
Security guards and waiters, the same way he would treat a VIP. He made them feel special because he knew they were. He understands that they are the people who make this country run. They clean, they cook, they build, they drive, they deliver. He told me, Herschel, make an effort to get to know people. Remember their names. That stuck with me. One time, I planned to take his kids to Disney World with my family. At the last minute, Donald said he'd like to join us. So there he was, in a business suit, on It's a Small World ride. That was something to see. It just shows you what a caring, loving father he is. It hurt my soul to hear the terrible names that people call Donald. The worst one is racist. I take it as a personal insult that people would think I've had a 37-year friendship with a racist. People who think that don't know what they're talking about. Growing up in the Deep South, I've seen racism up close. I know what it is, and it isn't Donald Trump. Just because someone loves and respects the flag, our national anthem, and our country, doesn't mean they don't care about social justice. I care about all those things. So does Donald Trump. He shows how much he cares about social justice in the black community through his actions. And his action speaks louder than stickers or slogans on a jersey. He keeps right on fighting to improve the lives of black Americans and all Americans. He works night and day. He never stops. He leaves nothing on the field. Some people don't like his style, the way he knocks down obstacles that get in the way of his goals. People on the opposing team didn't like when I ran over them either. But that's how you get the job done. I pray every night that God gives him more time. Give him 4 more years. He has accomplished so much almost all by himself on a constant attack. But there's still more work to be done. If you love America and want to make it better, Donald Trump is your president.
That is a great, man, what a testament that is right there. And he's right. The president and all the things that he's gone through, he's been on his own. Look, he has his family. He has some people that are close to him, like Herschel Walker and some others. But you can see that there's a lot of people he just cannot trust that he's surrounded by. Many of the people he surrounded himself with in Washington, D.C., I'm going to be honest about that. I have not been happy about many of the choices that he has made about who to put into his cabinet. However, the president stepped into this, and when you step into Washington, D.C., the first thing Washington, D.C. will tell you is that you should choose people from Washington, D.C. to do your bidding and to be in your cabinet. And quite frankly, I don't think there's anything further from the truth. But the president has faced, regardless of who's close to him and who's not, he faces the constant onslaught of attacks on a daily basis. Just yesterday, I tweeted something out in support of the president, and somebody, actually it was my show from yesterday, and you can go on Twitter and probably see it, even though I blocked the person, but they just responded with a picture of me with a penis drawn over my face. This is the mindset that you get on Twitter. Now that was one tweet that I did. Imagine what this president gets on a daily basis. If I look at one of his tweets, he may get 70,000 comments. I know he gets 70,000 likes. Let me look at one of his tweets real quick. Let me pull it up here and I'll show you the veracity of the magnification of some of these tweets that he has. Let's see if Twitter will ever come up here. Let's see here. Let me look it up here. There he is. So he has gotten, this is on his last 3 tweets. 32,000 likes, 10,000 retweets. The second one is 34,000 likes, 9,000 retweets. And the third one is 43,000, 11,000 retweets. But all of them have between 2,000 and 4,000 comments. I said 40,000, but I meant likes. But this is the onslaught that the president gets, and it's even higher when these are videos that he was tweeting out from the DNC convention that I'm playing here. But when he himself tweets something out, here you go. This is, I guess I was right. He tweeted something out about Joe Biden, 29,000 comments. Now, if you're not into Twitter, you won't understand the reality of that. But to get 29,000 people to comment on something that you said on Twitter, that's huge. That is really huge. Not many people are going to get that many responses where people actually make a comment to something that they say. And I'm looking at several of them, 22,000 comments, 24,000 comments, and so on and so forth. When he actually tweets something, he gets above 20,000 comments on average. That's when he tweets something that he said. That's very, you want to talk about social media influence, that's social media influence. Where was I going with that? He faces, if you read the comments that are on there, that's 29,000, 30,000 comments, and you read what people are saying. Yeah, I had a penis drawn over my face on one of them, or people call me, F you and this and that. But we're talking about one here, one there. I mean, the most I've ever had is like 10,000 comments on a picture that I posted of me with 2 guns laying in the bed, and it said, even though I have this entire bed, they always insist on cuddling. It got 10,000 comments, most of them bad, horrific, I'm just absolutely nasty comments, rude, crude. And the president's gets those by the tens of thousands every day. On top of that, media constantly lying. You have Attorney General, like here in New York, going after him. I saw one of the dumbest headlines I've ever seen. I'll have to pull it up on Drudge, where they're going to go after him on something. It's not even something that's against the law. The Attorney General wants to look into the fact that he says things that are boastful. Now, there's one other thing I want to point out about last night. And listen, you can go and watch it, and I recommend that you do. There's a tremendous amount more than what I'm going over. These are just the highlights that I think were from last night. There's one more. And I think it's probably the most important thing that was said last night. But I'm going to take a break real quick, and I'll be right back. Hey, this is Jonathan Gilliam. I want to make sure you know about my best-selling book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. Make sure you go check it out. It has 2 workbooks, a threat assessment and a defense assessment workbook. And the thing about these books is that when you read Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, it's split in 2 different sections overall. The first section, it actually shows you how to divide your life into sectors and look at each sector from the attacker's point of view and build target packages on yourself. And the second half of the book talks about how to use the information that you collect on yourself and these attacks that you plan on yourself, and how to use that to set up better defenses, mitigation strategies, plans of action, so that you don't have to react if something happens. You can act, and you can avoid any issues if possible. Now, the 2 workbooks, like I said, go right along with that, the threat assessment and the defense assessment workbooks. They're both fillable workbooks. And then even, I would say just as equally important now is The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. It's a children's book of pictures, and each picture has about 4 to 5 lessons built into the pictures. There's no words. The pictures actually have the lessons built in there, and you as the parent can go to teamlittlebigs.com, download the lesson plans, so you hand the book to the child, and then you go through the lesson plans. It's unbelievable. It's gotten rave reviews. Parents now have a tool that they can teach safety, awareness, and communication with their children at a very young age. Go get all of it. Make your life extraordinary and safe, and be aware. Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival. It's 2 workbooks, 1 and 2, and The Adventures of Team Little Bigs, a parent's book for children. Go get them, check them out. I guarantee you, folks, I guarantee you this, you will make your homeland safer. And let's get back to the show. All right. So, not announcements, but I've talked to a couple people about coming onto this show, And just so you'll know, I've had a couple of guests here and there. Still going to have some authors come on and talk about their books from Post Hill. Post Hill, if you look them up, Post Hill Press, they do amazing books. That's who publishes my books. And they do a lot of not just conservative books, but just really good books. Anthony Zaccardi, who runs Post Hill Press, is an amazing guy, and he pays close attention to the authors that he recruits. But I have some other special guests that are going to be coming on over the next month or two, and you're going to enjoy these shows. Trust me. I've had a couple of them on before when I had the video show that was called The Experts, and so we're going to bring them back, and then a couple others some big names. Listen, I'm going to try to cash in on some big names that I know, and make it more, I don't know, eclectic, I guess. I don't know what, I'm just talking now. Okay, so here is the other, and I think the most important soundbite from last night. This gentleman, I cannot pronounce his name. I'm going to let it play, and then because where I have the video up here, a PBS NewsHour, they're not putting anybody's names up. That's the one that I picked on YouTube to play these off of. But he's from Cuba, and when you hear his story, I've been saying for a long time, I'm not saying that the president ever listens to me. I'm never going to assume that, but I, having traveled in Florida, and the president lives down there, so I'm sure he's seen this, but Cubans have, I think, the most modern and incredible story about the reality next to Venezuelans about what happens, not when you've lived under communism, but when you go to communism. See, Hong Kong, China, people that grew up in Russia or Poland, those people grew up in socialism or communism. It's really the same thing. But Cuba changed. And there's people here that fled Cuba that actually fought against the communist regime there. And they're here now. And I think it's an incredible voice that people need to hear. And this is exactly why I say that.
Hello, my name is Maximo Alvarez.
Maximo Alvarez, I believe, is what his name is. Go ahead with it, buddy.
I'm in Miami, Florida. Not far from the state of Florida, which is in just a 90-mile wide blue strip on a map for me.
Now, what he says there, he's in Miami, Florida, just a mile from a 90-mile wide blue strip that's just a mile from him, and it doesn't really mean a lot to a lot of people, but listen.
It divides freedom from fear.
It divides freedom from fear. That 90 miles of water divides freedom from fear. And this is the same place that he's talking about where the Obama administration was going out of their way to build relationships with and open up the ability of people to go back and forth to Cuba.
It divides the past from the present, from the future. I know all about the past. I'll never forget my own. My family has fled totalitarianism and communism more than once. First my dad from Spain, then from Cuba. But my families don't run away. By the grace of God, I live the American dream, the greatest blessing I ever had. My dad, who only had a 6th grade education, told me, don't lose this place. You'll never be as lucky as me. I'm speaking to you today because my family is done abandoning what we rightfully earned. There's no place to hide. I'm speaking to you today because President Trump may not always be politically correct. He's in fact a successful businessman, not your average career politician. Our president is just another family man, a friend, and most important, our elected commander-in-chief who puts America first. Keep in mind, the other guy running for president is mostly concerned about power. Yes, power for them, but not for the benefit of all Americans. I'm speaking to you today because I have seen people like this before. I've seen movements like this before. I've seen ideas like this before. And I am here to tell you, we cannot let them take over our country. I heard the promises of Fidel Castro, and I can never forget all those who grew up around me, who looked like me, who suffered and starved and died because they believed those empty promises. They swallowed the communist poison pill. If you have a chance, go to the Freedom Tower in Miami. Stop and listen. You can still hear the sounds of those broken promises. It is the sound of waves in the ocean carrying families clinging to pieces of wood. Families with children who can't swim, but willing to risk everything to reach this blessed land. It is the sound of tears hitting the paper of an application to become an American citizen. Most heard and liked the promises, but soon after, they experienced the reality. Look at them, listen to them, learn the truth. Those false promises spread the wealth, free education, free health care, defund the police, trust the socialist state more than your family and your community. They don't sound radical to my ears. They sound familiar. When Fidel Castro was asked if he was a communist, he said he was a Roman Catholic. He knew he had to hide the truth. But the country I was born in is gone, totally destroyed. When I watch the news in Seattle, Chicago, Portland, and other cities, when I see the history being rewritten, when I hear the promises, I've heard echoes of the former life I never wanted to hear again. I see shadows I thought I had outrun. My parents only wanted one person to decide my fate, me. Not some party member, not some government official, not some bureaucrat. In America, I would decide my own future. I am so grateful to America, the place where I was able to build my American dream through hard work and determination. President Trump knows that the American story was written by people just like you and I, who love our country and take risks to build a future for our families and neighbors. I may be a Cuban-born, but I am 100% American.
Amen.
This is the greatest country in the world. And I said this before. If I gave away everything that I have today, it would not equal 1% of what I was given when I came to this great country of ours. The gift of freedom. Right now, it is up to us to decide our fate and to choose freedom over oppression. President Trump, he's fighting the forces of anarchy and communism. And I know he will continue to do just that. And what about his opponent and the rest of the DC swamp? I have no doubt they will hand the country over to those dangerous forces. You and I will decide. And here's what I've decided. My decision is very easy. I choose President Trump because I choose America. I choose freedom. I still hear my dad. There is no other place to go. Thank you, and may the good Lord bless America.
Now that is a testimony. Now, does that reflect anything in the headlines that I talked about at the beginning of this show? Go look at the headlines. I challenge you, go look at pull up Drudge Report. Scour through, just go through those headlines. Look at foxnews.com. Shame on foxnews.com. This is what's important. This is what's at stake. Not just a politics as usual. This is about freedom. That is a man that in his lifetime left a place that's 90 miles below Florida. And like he was saying, that some people that could not swim would get on wood and were happier doing that than staying on that island with that dictator under communism. And they would try to float and get here from Cuba. So as I listened to the RNC convention yesterday, what stood out to me wasn't just that it was about the president. It wasn't doom and gloom, which you see when you look at all of the headlines. Shame on foxnews.com. Shame on all these different news agencies that they didn't show the reality of what's happening. What I saw last night that stood out to me was that there was a tremendous amount of people that understand what is happening in this country and what's at stake in this election. It's not even a President Trump thing or Republican Party thing or a Democrat Party thing or a Joe Biden thing. When I heard the gentleman that came here from Cuba, he said it best. His father told him when they were leaving Cuba, there is nowhere else to go. This is it, America. I'm Jonathan Gilliam. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. Peace, and we're out of here.